Alright, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Saint, and today we are recording the first episode of hopefully what is going to be a series, but it really depends on how much interest I have for just recording these videos because I have not recorded in a hell of a long time. Today we are joined by Fish,
Hello.
Starfish. He's been generous enough to help record this as long and just help ask any questions if those come up to help give some extra clarification. And as to why I'm doing this, I'm actually recording this first video on what draft leagues like in terms of community, basically, in terms of how people go from one place to another, and in terms of how leagues differentiate between substantially sized with like mediocre middle tier leagues to just like straight up unleagues. And I feel like a lot of new leagues and events are happening right now, so I think it's important that somebody jumps in to help give some clarification on what like the actual experience and what it actually is like for somebody who may be looking to expand their league or expand their tour or anything for future. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, we should probably discuss the differences between an active like top league and an active like middle to low tier league. For this case, we're just gonna lump the two together. Okay? So we're gonna lump medium to small leagues together. We're gonna just keep the big leagues separate, just for the sake of this. But obviously, there are some leagues that are way better or like way bigger than others. But for just purposes, we'll just keep it simple. So in terms of top leagues right now, everybody in the community who has been around long enough probably knows of LD and Hive as the pinnacle of draft. Right? These have been the two of them have been listed as the top of the ladder for a long time for all draft leagues. In fact, they've just had such a long, rich history, and people at least at one point. I do not know if they still see them the same way, but at some point it was everybody's goal to basically get on Hive invites. Everybody wanted to play in LD. LD minors apps when they first came out back in season 1, they surpassed over 200. Everybody wants to get into these two leagues just because of the level of competition, the chat presence, whatever it is. But they're just the pinnacle. Then one step below, we have leagues such as Oblivion, OLT. We have like DGBA. At one point, you could probably consider the IPA as one of these leagues as well. You can maybe make an argument for leagues such as UPA or UDL, which have all been around for a long amount of time. And really, what sets these leagues apart from a lot of the small leagues is that they've been around for a long time. I mean, most of these leagues, with the exception of maybe UDL, they are about to hit double digits in terms of their league seasons. They have a usually a pretty well known and respected commissioner. In which case you have people like Azar, you have Hiker, Haz and CRU Jack. You have myself, Ice Demon Gray and Ben, Carson and Massey for UDL. Like all of us, I feel like if you've been around the community long enough, you've at least heard of us at some point. And even if you haven't, you kind of like people will know of us just in general. So because of that, people are then interested in what our leagues have to offer. We will always have for the foreseeable future until unless there's a dramatic change to the draft community, to our individual communities that help our leagues run, leagues will not die off anytime soon. Like even in off seasons, there will be people that are talking in the server. There will be people that actively always look to get added to the servers if your server is public, such as Oblivion, LD, and Hive. In fact, I think DGBA is the only public server out of the few I mentioned. And all of these leagues have what's probably most important is they have an established community where there's like a crucial core identity to each of these leagues. That's kind of hard to explain what I mean by that. But if you if you're in these servers, you'll probably understand more what I mean. But all of these leagues have like a core group of people basically, and they have a very unique like charm to them basically, and they bring something very specific, chat wise or like play wise or something. There's something, you know. Like obviously UPA is known for more like a more shit posty nature, a very casual, a lot of jokes, a lot of shit posting and stuff. LD and Hive, LD especially, known for like great players. Sometimes can be seen as toxic, depending on who you ask. But as a whole, well respected and regarded as the number one league right there in terms of competition alone. DGBA, you know, you think of the Has, Jeremy, Chessman, Agronauts. You know, in some cases, you could probably consider Cena. You have X Luke as well, like that core of people that bring, you know, a very unique culture to all of these leagues. And because of they have that culture to them, basically, these leagues are able to, even if your commissioner isn't as active or doesn't know as much about, you know, the current meta of draft in terms of playing itself, league communities will survive. And that's the number one thing that people don't understand about draft like running a draft league. Without a community, your league is nothing. So there are some leagues out there that are just really just regarded as a Sunday, an extra game on the weekend. Basically, you know, they're nothing special. They're just there for supposedly clout reasons, or you know, they're just one game a week, done. Don't talk in chat. Like they don't add anything except for that one game. And there are those leagues for people. And okay, and now we're going to talk about like medium to small leagues. Now this is a little more broad, and I'm sorry if you don't personally consider your league that way. But there are leagues such as the Coliseum, SBT, MLP, WPF. You could probably consider Trickhouse. You can probably consider stuff like the Lodge. I'm sure it's my service. There's CPL. Like there's a lot of these like medium to small leagues basically that all, you know, they have some sort of like something special about them. Obviously, all leagues have something special about them, but they don't quite have, you know, either the competition level. They don't have like the same sense of community. You know, maybe they don't have like good organization or something. Uh, so there's something that's just, you know, clearly stands out between differences between these leagues. Usually, competition level is the number one thing. I think that competition level comes with, you know, community. And as of recently, I'm gonna use Trickhouse as an example. But when you have a league, basically, you need to ensure that you have a strong central group of people that will help you build your community. Because that's the number one thing that people, you know, want to see when you have a league. They want to see that you have a strong community built up, so that, you know, people can feel welcome. They feel, you know, invited. They feel like it's a positive environment for them to grow in, and then from there, that's when you should be looking to add the competition level in. You need to have that central group of people that are going to be active in your server, and could make it a positive and warming environment in order for you to then proceed to add competition to it. And it obviously is an added bonus if those people that are in the core essential group of your community are also good players, because that just further incentivizes you know, the competition level to grow higher. But without a sense of identity, you know, your league is effectively nothing. Like it's not really like a league if your league is just being considered an extra game on the weekend. Like that's not really a league. That's more of a just, you know, it's honestly more of a chore, a drag. Like, I sorry if that is blunt, but it really is. You know, like people in the community tend to have a bad tendency to play like in way too many leagues, um, and they should possibly then they should probably should. Um, and you know that, you know, that's whatever. But if your league is just considered just an extra game, you can't really, you know, it can't really grow. It can't really become better as a whole. You know. And an example of this, like the most prominent example of this right now, is the Trick House, where you know they wanted to go big, they wanted to go great right off the bat, and you know they didn't really understand how to go about doing that. So right now, like Trick House was advertised as looking for the best of competition. They advertised as having great admins, great team, and being honest, like the server is dead. Everybody knows that. Like there's been like a million drops. There's been very little talk in the server. Everybody plays like the games at the last second. Nobody really truly cares about the server itself, and that's a huge problem because this league didn't spend the necessary time to build up their server from the bottom up. They didn't go about building the community first, and they just went straight for the big name players. And your big name players are more like affiliated with big name leagues, then they're most likely going to spend their time with the big name leagues versus your small league first trying to get big for the first time. And because of that, Trick House is in a state of limbo. Now, I'm glad they're doing a tour to help revive their server, but it's going to take time to rebuild the server to a point where it can sustain itself once again. Star, so far does that make sense? Like, do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It was just make so pretty much you're just saying like that you shouldn't just go, like you should aim high but don't try to start high is like
Yeah,
what I'm trying to pick it
yeah,
up from this.
yeah. So, um, basically, think of it like this: like, if you were, if you were new to a city and you were trying to, create a business, you wouldn't go straight for all the brand names. Like, you would start by building up your business to a position where it's secure first. Like you would want to make sure that your business is stable enough where if you were to add like if you were to take risk with your business would still be stable as a result, even if your expansion was a failure. You would want to make sure your business survives regardless, because that's the eventual goal. It's the same thing with draft league. No matter how much you want to make your league great, like competitive, like tough, like add all the best players from all around the community, that's not really realistic to do like right off the bat. You have to take time, and that's another thing. Like with all of the big leagues that have been around, like we've all been around since like 2018, in some cases 2016. Like the skeletons of some of these servers were created. Like maybe they weren't the same servers then. Obviously, all servers change over time. Like that's just a thing that happens when you're on Discord. People come and go, and as they come and go, they leave, new people come in, and then the identity of these servers changes a bit. But as a whole, the idea stands that all of our leagues have been around for forever. And because we've been around forever, we can continue to maintain the presence as we do in the community. Whereas, smaller, newer leagues obviously haven't been around the league community enough to do that. Okay. And that'll bring me to my second thing. I mentioned it briefly, but I want to talk about circles of influence. And what I mean by this is that in draft, we're a very secluded community, basically. You'll find that a lot of people kind of think of draft league as a bunch of different like triangles or circles, or whatever shape you want to think about it. Basically, uh, the big leagues, the big leagues in parentheses, um, we all we all kind of interlap with one another basically. In Hive and LD definitely have a lot of interlap. OOT and DGBA have a lot of interlap, for example. And people from within those servers then branch out into a lot of smaller little circles uh, that are the smaller leagues. There are a lot of WPF or former WPF players that are in Oblivion, for example. There are a lot of Hive players in the Colosseum, for example, and that's something that comes. Every league basically is built out. Like every big league is built out of a lot of people from smaller circles of influence that come together and form like this bigger circle of influence that these bigger leagues exert. So because of this, our leagues have a very strong reputation among the community, and we're able to maintain that basically. Whether or not we realize it, whether or not the actual people running these leagues realize it or not, like people discuss our leagues in all kinds of different servers that we might not necessarily know about, because of all the different communities and smaller spheres of influence that our leagues seep into, basically. Uh, and obviously, the smaller leagues then continue to try and poach bigger names from the bigger servers into the smaller leagues. And because of this circle of influence, what I'm trying to say by this is that obviously all of these names basically flow back to some kind of community, some kind of major community usually. And what happens is that a lot of the smaller leagues, they try to expand their leagues, basically because for whatever reason, obviously all league commissioners, I feel like all have that one phase in time where they want to make their league bigger, because obviously in some cases if your league has like 600 people or 800 people or like 80 of the best players in the community, that's something to brag about. And obviously everybody wants something to be proud of. Everybody wants something they can show off to everybody else. They want something special that sets them apart from other leagues. They want something unique that defines them. And when smaller leagues try to expand, basically, what they don't realize is that most of the supposedly big name players have already set their roots in other servers. It's like for example, let's say that Hiker Toad was to join your league. You can't expect Hiker to be active in your league if his main community is LD, and he's gonna always spend most of his time in LD or cash game or in VCs in like OOT and DGBA. You can't expect him to suddenly be active in this league that you started. That's a misconception a lot of people make when they're expanding. It's because these individuals, their main circles, basically, where they reside, are not your league. You can't add the big names and then expect them to be active in your smaller league. That rarely happens, unless you're like ridiculously active, like Venno or like myself, for example. Can't really expect like well-known players that usually run in like bigger leagues to come down and suddenly be active everywhere they go. That's not true at all. Most people, that's not at all possible. And I feel like that's a misconception a lot of newer commissioners make, that every like big name ad will add something to to chat presence to improve your community. Then they're just dead, and then they attract a lot of big name players that come with your main attraction, like your main best player. Let's say that you added a Hiker to your league, like I said. If Hiker's friends knew that Hiker was going to play in your league, they would probably want to come too. But if Hiker is dead in your league, then all the people that Hiker attracted are going to end up being dead in your league too. So basically an endless cycle. Unless you really have like something to add to help them, to some kind of extra motivator for them, an extra reason for them to be active in your server. They're not going to be active in your server, and that just decreases the activity of your server. One example of this I can think of is when I was first playing Mons, the Draft League Mons in 2018. The second league I joined was the MWPA, and obviously that league now has there's some debate now about KMJ and all of the drama that KMJ has unfortunately caused our community. At the time, WPA was it was substantially sized, I would say, and it had a very wholesome community. It was a very nice server. There was a good mix of anime enthusiasts and just casual Mons players. There's a very wholesome community that had a lot of good things to it. Then they tried to expand, add a league or two, and add a few more big name players. And then the season after that, chat dead. And now, now where we are now, July of 2020, servers they know what's going on in the server. Nothing has happened in the server in a long time. Nobody has talked there. There's been no league, and even when there was a league, you didn't really hear much about it. And that's what happens when you overexpand beyond your borders. Every league that expands, basically, it's a tough phase of time. In Oblivion, when I expanded OLT, I had over half of a league drop my first season of expansion. In DGBA, when they expanded and added the Poison Points division, shit went dead. Like in LD, until recently, until this past season, LD Miners was filled with, desperately adding, like they were added, they've added like a lot of good players now, and this season it's been fine. But until this season, there was a lot of like necessity for extensions. There was a lot of joining, a lot of inactivity. Like a lot of the ads were like, it didn't really add anything to the server. And that's the problem with expansion. If your server isn't big enough and like has a strong enough community to survive expansion, then your league is going to have very big lasting consequences. It's going to struggle immensely. You need to have that strong background, like backbone of a strong established community before you even think about expanding your own league. That's something that people don't understand. And even in this case, like, I'm just being honest, expansion gets harder and harder every season the more that these big leagues establish themselves. Because we obviously, all the big leagues continue to add people at the same time that all the smaller leagues try to add people. And we'll take people from your communities and add them to ours. And, because we want to give, most league commissioners try to give people opportunity. We try to, encourage like people from smaller communities to come into the bigger communities to then, make a name for themselves and hopefully get picked up and, continue to circle around in higher and stronger competition. OLT is a good example of this, where, this past season we got Habada from the WPF, and Habada really impressed in OLT. So then we added him to LG Miners, and he's been tearing it up. He's like 4-1, 5-1, something like that. Like, he's been doing great. Like people like that, basically, we give them a chance. They prove themselves, and they get around the community. And now and then basically they establish themselves as a community member. Because we do that, like your smaller leagues, you guys are the ones that take the hit because you lose like an established player, at least in that community. You lose a good player, then if they're not active in your server anymore, that's obviously a loss to your server. And because of that, it's hard to expand if you're a small league that doesn't have like history or the community or like the competition level. Like you need all of these. You need a strong sense of community. You need a good moderation team. You need a strong competition level. And you need to have good like history or reputation league wise in order to even consider expanding. If you don't have all those 4 boxes checked off, don't try. Just don't make an effort to try and expand unnecessarily. It's better that people that own leagues understand their purpose isn't to expand and become the most competitive thing in the world anymore. It's not gonna happen. Like if I'm being honest, because of the the nature of like team tours and the exclusivity, how exclusive the draft community is. Where if you're on the top, it's easy to get to the top servers, but it's hard for smaller like newer people to get into all the top servers. It's more realistic if you own a medium to small size league to stay at that size and maintain your sense of community versus adapting your entire league to match the same system as all the top leagues. That's because there is no way, like literally, there is such a small chance that your lesser known league can magically expand to the point of the other like well-known, well-respected leagues. Like it's just not possible, realistically speaking. Yes, maybe there's a slim chance that all the things go in your favor and then it actually happens. But are you prepared to deal with the consequences if it doesn't? Like I said, when you expand, your league takes a big hit, uh, like there because you add new people. But what if the new people don't like your league? Then they'll talk trash about your league to their people they talk to, and if they and then that keeps spreading. Like the negative connotations to your league can spread, and that can effectively kill off your league. If there's a cancer in your league, and all the big time players notice, and they talk about that in their home communities, then your league doesn't look anywhere near as good anymore. Like, can you handle that risk reward factor and come off strong enough to survive? It's the real question you have to consider before you try expanding. And that's something that people don't understand. Like I try to make sure that when I go around to different communities, just checking in with them and like seeing what's up on their servers. I try to look for people that like obviously like as a commissioner, I always try to add people that I know are going to be active and like good presences. And like if possible, I would like them to be good players as well. As a whole, like if you don't have that good but as a whole, like if you just try to just jump up too far in advance, and don't really understand your place in the community, like if you don't really understand like what's feasible for your league to accomplish expansion wise and what's not, your league could take a huge hit and no longer be anywhere near the same level as it is now. It's better to stay like medium sized to low sized and have an amazing community and expand and lose all of that entirely. It's by far. Because of that, people need to start evaluating their leagues more and figuring out really the identity as to which their leagues want to to fulfill in the overall draft community for before then debating is it right to expand, is it right to add these people, is it right to add that people. Sometimes as the commissioner you have to make tough decisions, and sometimes part of that decision is understanding where your place in the community is, like what's feasible, what you as an owner need to do in order to keep your league going. And sometimes the answer isn't adding the best of the best players. Yeah, that's about it on my end for this particular subject. Star, do you have any questions?
No, actually, everything made sense. It just pretty much what I picked up from this is that you should make sure, like, when you're starting small, you like the saying, you have to learn how to crawl before you can walk, or
Yeah, for sure.
Close to whatever that was, but that makes sense. Yeah, just you shouldn't aim too high, or not aim too high. You shouldn't jump too high. I guess you should say.
Sure. And then once again, there's no such thing as ever like truly failing in the community. Like there's always like a new place that will accept you for who you are. But being in the best, trying for new league owners out there, or current league owners that are thinking about expansion, really like take a second to think about what the potential aftermath of that potential expansion can be. Because there are some leagues that are starting to I feel like I'm not gonna list their names specifically, but they're expanding basically, and they're trying to expand to a point that they actually can't handle, because of their mod team, their competition level, or their overall reputation. Some things just aren't meant to happen. I don't mean that to be like in a discouraging way, but it's the reality of life. Like there are some things that just won't work out, no matter how hard you try. And if you're a new league commissioner and you're trying to think about that, you're trying to think about expansion, really think about what the consequences might be before trying. And then if your decision is that at the end of the day I can expand, I can take the hit, that's fine, good, go ahead. There's also, but you can also just have a more natural progression. But at the end of the day, without the sense of community, your league's done. So no matter what you end up deciding to do, keep that sense of community, do everything else after. Then your league will be great. It might not be great in the same way you think it is, but it can still be great in different ways. yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that's it for this time. I will try to bring another segment sometime soon, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.